everybody. Welcome to the third installment of the IMF Senior Podcast, Between Two Lions. Today, our two hosts are Priya and Ryan Strenkowski, and today we are joined by Don Rawitsch. Would you like to introduce yourself, please, Don?
Well, yes, I'm glad to be here. I have spent my entire career in educational technology, and of course, interestingly enough, as you might know, I am famous for being a co-creator of the Oregon Trail game, and ever since then, I haven't done anything of note. No, just kidding. Um, I'm pleased to be here, and if I can just offer a couple of more points of background. Um, 3 months ago marked the 50th anniversary of the first use of the original Oregon Trail game. And so I've spent 50 years of my life answering questions like these. But it's been an amazing experience to be connected for all those years with this invention, and so I'm very happy about that. And let's see. Well, and I'm prepared to give you some inside information on the Oregon Trail game. So I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. I'll hand it off to Ryan and Priya.
Thank you very much, Don. I just to add on to what you were saying, that it's the 50th anniversary of the first play of Oregon Trail. That was with your students, right? When you were a history teacher?
Yes. Actually, I was doing my student teaching, which you may know is an exercise you go through your last year in college, so to prepare yourself for a career in teaching. And I had been assigned by my supervising teacher to teach a unit on the westward movement in the United States in the 19th century. And I just thought to myself, if I tell the kids just read about it in the textbook, they're going to revolt. So we needed something a little more innovative. And I was rooming in an apartment with two colleagues who were doing their student teaching in mathematics. And we sat down one day, and 2 weeks later, we had Oregon Trail version 1.0.
That's great. That's such an awesome story to hear from. It's something that we can be able to do someday, you know. What kind of inspired the creative approach behind your student teaching? Like, most student teachers would just get a basic planner and do their lesson books and just go through it as much as they can. Whereas you took the approach of actually making a physical game and then repurposing that into what we know today.
Right. Well, I've always had very strong feelings about the necessity for a teacher to come up with some unexpected and innovative activities for students, and not just march our way through a textbook. As a matter of fact, this is just a little side note, but when I was doing that student teaching and before we started working on the Oregon Trail, I wanted to provide some information to my students about Lewis and Clark, the two explorers that helped pave the way for the expansion of the United States. And so I got together with one of my apartment partners who was teaching in the same school, and we worked something out. And the next day, we showed up in my classroom dressed in buckskins and raccoon hats and things like that, and had a dialogue with the students in my class, taking on the roles of Lewis and Clark. And that I'm pretty sure that they enjoyed and got more out of that than they would have from the textbook that day.
That's awesome. I wish my teachers did that, honestly.
That's like such a great way to learn, making it hands-on and just entertaining. People just learn better that way, and it's really great that you understood that.
Well, yeah, it just seemed natural to me that, and as a matter of fact, as part of my student teaching, I was what I say, I had the opportunity to sit in on other classrooms with other teachers to see how they did it. And
Yeah,
some of them were kind of innovative, and others just marched them through it. And you could tell watching the students who was who was picking up on learning and who was just watching the clock and praying that it would end soon.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, kind of going on that note, what you guys did in Oregon Trail, going through a computer software in 1971, I believe.
That's right.
There was no blueprint for making a game. There was no process beforehand. You kind of pioneered that whole production and industry. And I'd just love to hear some of the challenges you faced in doing so, and how you guys had to create a specific workflow all on your own, no testing prior.
Sure. I was interested in how you phrased that a second ago, because I often say to people when I'm talking about it that at the time that we invented the first Oregon Trail game, there were no experts around that we could consult. There were no books on designing games that we could look at. There were no college courses we could have taken to prepare us for this, and there were practically no other products available to people that were anything like the Oregon Trail model. So I've always thought that we were insanely lucky that we hit upon a formula, so to speak, to produce a game that has lasted 50 years. And if it's helpful, I have a little list here of some of the attributes that we felt were important to put into the game, even though we weren't sure we were right. But
Yeah.
there's 5 items that I like to cite. First of all, we gave the player a degree of control over what was going on in the program. There were other computer games available to schools, learning games, but it was simply you click on something on the screen to get an answer right or wrong or whatever. But you weren't really controlling events.
No real interactivity with the player.
Right. Secondly, I think it was a great idea when we put the player in an engaging story. And so, not only were you trying to figure out the logic of the game and strategies that would help you succeed, but you were there. You were in the wagon. And one thing that I found interesting I visited a couple of universities to visit the Department of software design, and I noticed amongst all of the technical staff people that they had, there was one person whose expertise was English and literature. And I asked, well, what was she doing in this department? And they told me the most important thing about an effective game is telling a story. And so we need to teach our designers how to create good storylines. Oregon Trail also, I think, is a good example of a simulation that has a sophisticated model underneath, but that the user can handle it very simply.
Yeah.
So, the amount of instructions that we gave the students on the screen with the first version was not very long. There wasn't very much that we had to explain to them, and then they picked it up as they went. Another thing that I think is important is that you balance your resources and your obstacles. So if you have a game where at every turn something terrible happens to you, and it's very difficult for you to win, to survive, you're going to get tired of that. At the same time, if you have all the resources and it's really easy to win the game, you'll get tired of that. So I think when you come up with a good balance of the two, that's what makes the challenge interesting for students. And then finally, I've always thought that part of the strength of our effort was the fact that we had there were three of us that put this thing together. Two of them were math people, and one of those two actually knew a fair amount about computing. And then there was me, the history guy. And I think the fact that we were coming at this from, I'll just say, three different points of view, made the strength of the game better, because we came up with ideas from different directions and kind of fed off one another.
Yeah.
So I would certainly advise, like people in your program, if you're putting a little team together to create some kind of a learning experience, try to get as broad a spectrum of backgrounds together, because it really makes the designing a richer experience.
Absolutely. Coming at it from all angles, kind of pick the best direction and the best aspects you want from a game that you normally wouldn't see. I think that's a great idea.
How did it feel when you made the Oregon film? Like, what was the process like for you? What was going through your mind when you were making it? How did it, I'm pretty sure your original idea was vastly different from the finished product. So how did it evolve?
Well, as you might know, among the many articles that have been written about this, I came up with the idea of bringing a game into my curriculum piece, in my unit that I was teaching. Um, I had seen examples of computer games, I'm sorry, of educational games before, but they were typically board game type activities. So I thought, well, maybe what I need to do is make a big map of the Western U.S. and draw in the Oregon Trail, and then we'll have some place markers, and kids will draw cards or roll dice, and Dungeons and Dragons, um, and that was I knew nothing about the potential of using computers, and so my two colleagues had more experience with that. And when I told them what I was doing, they thought it was really a creative idea, but it could be done a lot better if we'd put it on a computer. And so that did kind of change the trajectory of the design and the thinking about this. And I think that it was what was probably most rewarding was the fact that we were working together, and as I said a minute ago, kind of coming up with new ideas and passing them back and forth and trying to make them as helpful as could be done. And the funny thing was that when I went to use this for the first time in my classes, the kids were just out of their minds with happiness because first of all, it was not the textbook, and second of all, many of them had never been on a computer before. In 71, there were some school districts, advanced thinking, where there was computer access available, but not in great quantities. And so maybe 5 or 10% of the kids in a school had the opportunity to get on a computer, and the others didn't even know it was there. The students were really excited about as they watched this thing unfold, and the computer, which was, as you may know, a teletype machine that typed away its messages to you, and then you typed in things that you wanted the computer to do. The interesting thing to me was that my supervising teacher, when I told him what I was doing, never came in to watch it, and that I think maybe none of the other teachers in the school knew what was going on, but the students certainly did, and that was very gratifying.
Absolutely.
Okay, so last question, right? So I remember you stated a few times that you were a history teacher. So with that being said, if you could live any time period, anywhere, in history, where would you go and why?
Well, I think I would have the most interest in the history of the United States, and especially in the years that had preceded the ones where I had a real life. So the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. Those were periods when people did a lot of things and had things at their disposal that are somewhat like things that we had in the 70s, 80s, 90s. But on the other hand, those latter years had really advanced technology and infrastructure ahead. And so life in those decades was actually quite a bit different than in those earlier decades. So I think it would be of interest to me to study that period of U.S. history and then think about the comparison of life just 10, 20 years later.
Absolutely. I know I'd pick a time period where I can just avoid dysentery,
Well, let's take care of one small corrective item here.
Yeah.
Our original version said nothing about dying of dysentery. I'd just like to make that clear, although you could get sick along the way.
Yeah.
But about 13 years later, when I was working at the MEC organization, and the MEC organization had put together development teams to create new software. There was a group, a team around 1984 that did a tremendous job in creating the version that probably most of you are familiar with, the one with the color, screen images and the tunes that are played and so forth. We just had a teletype. There was no visuals to look at and so on. So we kind of created the model for the flow of the game, and then others that followed us spiffed it up as the technology allowed.
Yeah, which honestly just makes it so much more impressive how much you were able to do with so much less. So let's turn it over to the Q&A. Do we have anyone more?
Yeah. I think.
All good.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
We got Vince.
Hey. What's it like basically just starting a genre, like having that feeling like your project basically was a standard for in all libraries for a long time, and everyone kind of knows what the Oregon Trail is because of what you guys made. So I guess what's that kind of feeling like?
You mean the feeling that you put something together that's going to be helpful in teaching people something that they didn't know about?
Yeah, just like, you made a program that was just so successful. You basically started a whole genre of games, and every library had your project in it. And your project is the first thing people think of when they think of the Oregon Trail.
One thing I have in front of me, a list that I've made in the past about why Oregon Trail was so popular. And some of the things that I've noted is number one, it's a survival game, which means there's a lot of motivation for kids. They like that kind of thing, and it's a challenge. It's easy to learn and easy to play, not always easy to survive. It requires problem solving and decision making, which I think is definitely required for this kind of a learning experience. The model that we created was very complex in terms of the long list of things that could happen to you, and the way that we put in variables so it never calculated quite the same way as you were traveling along. Which is to say that it's a game that never plays the same way twice. Play it 1,000 times. It'll always be a little bit different. And I think that really drew kids to it. Also, we did back up our initial draft with historical information that made it more historically accurate. And that was something that teachers really appreciated, because most teachers at the time didn't want to just have kids, playing arcade games, but they were okay with the game format as long as you could show that there was historical or other kinds of information standing behind it. And then the thing I said before about the user being first person in an adventure story. So those were things that really grabbed people. And one thing, the question reminded me of one thing, which is I've never done any kind of a research study to find out how many people know a lot about the Oregon Trail. I mean the trail,
Yeah.
not the game, and how much of what they know came from the game. I think that would be an interesting research study.
Well, I'm guilty of that. Most of my knowledge does come from the game.
All right. Thank you.
Sure. So I'm Dalton. Nice to meet you. Thanks for coming again. I was just wondering, what is the favorite project that you've worked on in your career besides the Oregon Trail?
Okay. Well, over the years that I've worked with educational technology companies, I have applied work to any number of projects, but the one that I'm most proud of, I think, and excited about beyond the Oregon Trail is a project that I was involved in from 2018 to 2020. I worked with a group that applied for a federal grant through the National Institutes of Health to create online learning materials to help kids understand how to lead healthy lives, and that period 2018 to 2020 was kind of an exact fit to when the vaping epidemic swept across the schools of this country. And so we created what I'm very proud of, a product that is a combination of an animated story that the students can follow on the screen, accompanied by a set of 4 computer games that are designed to, like if you were learning about the Oregon Trail, but that they were designed so you would learn more about vaping and hopefully information that would cause you to think twice before you got involved in a habit like that. So that was a 2-year project with $1 million budget, and we had a great team of about 10 people, and that's probably besides Oregon Trail, that would be the thing that I'm most proud of.
Thank you so much.
Hello, I'm Dustin. You're awesome. So I just want to ask, when you're working on a project, how do you stop yourself from procrastinating?
From procrastinating?
Yes.
Well, let's see. I don't know if I can explain it, but I'm one of those people that never likes to let a task go undone. And so I was in that anti-vaping product I just mentioned. I was the project manager of the team, and we had a schedule, we had deadlines, and so it's just not in my nature to set things aside and say, well, I'm going to a movie today, so I'll pick up on that in a couple of days. My body wouldn't allow me to do that.
Thanks.
Now, we might though make one other comment. Good ideas do take some work to develop. So it's probably not a bad idea to sometimes shift gears and pull away from the daily tasks of the project and trying to think higher level thoughts. But I don't know. Everybody's got their own style.
Hi, I'm Vincent. I didn't introduce myself last time. I guess my other question would be, what are your thoughts on how educational technology and especially educational entertainment is going today? Like, are you happy with where it's going? Do you see where it can improve? What are your general thoughts on that?
Well, I think that that educational use of technology has come a long way, and that it's been given more and more space in the curriculum to across, of course, the whole spectrum of subjects, because they're always learning related things that you can come up with using technology that would help people understand things better. I've always thought that learning is understanding. And so if you can do a good job of getting people involved in something where they can't help but absorb information, that's going to be really helpful. So that's...
Thank you.
Prod me a little more.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I guess. I mean, what are maybe some opportunities in education technology do you see, or what are some maybe problems like you see maybe some like stopping points, like maybe accessibility for some teachers who aren't used to technology or something like that?
Well, throughout the first, 30 years of my work, there definitely were teachers who didn't want anything to do with the technology, didn't want to have to learn it, and were convinced that it was a passing fad. Well, they were proven wrong, and so now, as new generations of teachers come into the schools, they are more prepared than ever to use technology. I mean, they learn how to do it doing stuff at home, Now they're teaching other people, and they know how to use the computers and the software and so forth without a problem. So I think that's been that movement to generations of younger teachers who have already embraced the value of using technology is a real boon to education.
Yeah, I've been seeing, like, I remember when my little brother, or when I graduated high school, and my little brother was still there, they were giving him like his own Chromebook, and all the rooms had these like smart boards and all the touch screen and like boards. You are seeing a lot of that now. Just really can't escape technology in a way.
Yeah, well, it's true. And even from the early days, I think the argument that we made that technology should be in the classroom is look around you outside the school building. Look in the office buildings, look in the government offices and so forth. They're all using technology. So how could anyone stand there and say, "Oh, technology is a frill, and it's just going to crowd other things out of our curriculum," like cursive writing and so forth.
Yeah. I remember having to do that.
But I would freely admit, at least in these latter years, that kids, say 8, 10, 12 years old, I'm sure would probably be more facile at using technology than I would be if I was a teacher standing in a classroom. So we've come a long way.
All right, I just have one question, and I think we can wrap it up. I'll come over here so you can see me. So Don, again, thank you for joining our class today. I think that this medium that we're using right now, Zoom, the ability that we can type you in is pretty magical. And so we can actually interact and ask you questions. And so also, we talked about in another class that it takes a reef to create the conditions where things can happen and magic can happen, like the Oregon Trail. And it's important to mention Carleton College. It attracted 3 pretty smart undergrads who were interested in trying this new stuff out, and gave you the permission to try this out on your middle schoolers. They were pretty lucky. Do you ever see your two the 2 other guys?
Definitely. One of them is one of my best friends, and the other guy I see occasionally. But yeah, we've kept in touch and done a lot of Zoom sessions at the behest of magazines and education.
They seem like characters, and yeah, it's wonderful. We're just saying to these undergrads that look around you and remember those relationships, because they do stay with you, and they turn out to be really important as you get older.
Yep.
Yeah. The other thing that I just want to notice, it's kind of interesting that you are a pioneer who made a pioneering game. So there's something quite meta about that.
Right. Yeah, I might mention, if I may, there's a history museum of Colorado in Denver, and they have all kinds of exhibits about the history of the state. And a couple of years ago, they came up with the idea of having an Oregon Trail night, because the staff people were of the age that they were well aware of what Oregon Trail was. And so somehow, through some roundabout route, they found me, and I had moved to the Denver area, so that was lucky. And they asked if I'd come and join them at the event. So I dressed up in my jeans and jean jacket and the cowboy hat, and went and shook hands all night and answered questions in a room. And they had a room that had, I don't know, 10 or 12 computers in it. You could just walk up to it and play Oregon Trail. And people were fascinated by this, and they even the parents that hadn't had technology in schools, but they knew about technology at home, and they well, I signed a lot of autographs that night. Let's just put it that way.
Well, I think you are a celebrity in our book for sure, Don. And thanks so much for joining our class. I'd just like to thank the two Lions, Priya and Ryan. Let's give it up for them, everybody. And,
Well, thank you, Don. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, the thing you said about discipline, it's very important to fight that procrastination. Lots of great questions, you guys. Thanks. All right, so I guess this concludes this edition of Between Two Lions with Don Rawitsch, the co-creator of the Oregon Trail. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.